Greetings YouTube, Fuzzfinger here, welcome back to Final Fantasy IX. So we're continuing on with our perfect game today, episode 3. So that means we're going not only for Excalibur II, which means we have to get towards the end within 12 hours, but also we're going to be collecting everything else on the way as well that could be missed. So I hope you enjoy watching today. For those following along with the game facts walkthrough, this is the section D1-03, the Alexandrian guardhouse and the Prima Vista crash site. So don't forget to leave a like if this helps you, and stay tuned for today's show. Right then, so I'm just going to reload my save game so we can get the timing perfected. And there's a few items to grab in this episode. So we're going to begin by controlling Steiner. Make sure you grab that Phoenix Pinion. And the first order of business is to speak to all the Pluto guards in order to get them to look for Princess Garnet. So that first one there is probably the trickiest, because if you run straight to him, he's going to start running in the opposite direction. So just do what I did in order to cut him off and make sure that you speak to him as quickly as. Obviously, if you make a mistake on that, you can just reload your save game since it's right next door, which is obviously a handy thing. Then just follow the path I'm taking here to speak to all of these other Pluto guards. Don't forget, if you do mess up in any room and end up spending longer than you need to, just head back to the main menu and then use the continue option, and that'll load you back at the start of that room. Very, very handy. I've used it quite a bit, although I do edit it out so as not to confuse you guys. So head over to the left here, you get a bit of a dialogue scene. And then the next Pluto knight is down, just chilling by the water here. And then we've just got a few more to go and grab before we switch over views to Zidane. Just be careful as you're mashing the X button, with a lot of the dialogue actually as you go through the game, because if you're not careful, some of these conversations repeat from the very beginning every time you start them again. So make sure you're just a little bit cautious and, you know, smashing that button and not starting up the same conversation, or you'll end up reloading from your continue. As a matter of fact, this is quite a lengthy one here, and I did just that and had to reload. This guy's going to list the knights we've spoken to before giving us an elixir. At which point, when he does give us that item, don't hit the X button after that, because that is the very end of the conversation. And if you do, he goes through the entire process again, as I've said, which is really annoying because then you have to reload. Right, so we're going to get some more cutscenes here. I think I mentioned in the last episode, actually, I do believe that out of all of the Final Fantasy games on the PS1 era, there's a heck of a lot of story to get through in this particular game. Far more so than Final Fantasy 7 or 8. Which means that a lot of this is going to be button mashing. But if you are interested in the story, and the movies that I have to cut out, the cutscenes that we have to skip, then do check out my previous Final Fantasy IX walkthrough. I do all the optional content, apart from Excalibur II, and we get to watch all the story and everything else as well. And that was with the Steam version of the game. This is the PS4 version. They're basically identical. Right, so once you've got control of Zidane, just run straight to Ruby, speak to her. Again, be careful not to start another dialogue once it's finished. And then head down the stairs here, at which point, more dialogue and more cutscenes. Some of this you can't skip as quickly as what's come before, so don't worry about that if you're hitting X and the dialogue's not disappearing immediately, that's normal. I've always felt sorry for Steiner at this part because he's genuinely trying to do what he thinks is best for the princess. He really does care about his duty, doesn't he? He'd easily lay down his life if he needed to in order to protect her. And yet it seems to be wholly underappreciated at this particular point in the game. So because we're going for a FFIX game, not just an Excalibur II game, there's a couple of optional items we need to grab in this next section here. A few people have commented saying we shouldn't be getting the items because we're going to run out of time. But that's not true. Because it's a perfect game, we kind of have to get the items. I do recommend optimising Zidane at that point to equip the Moonstone. So to get these items, first turn this wheel to the left. Then Steiner comes running and tells us off. Then Zidane automatically turns it back to the right. And then when we can choose the option again, we need to turn it to the right. Just make sure you select those options carefully so you don't pick the same one twice by mistake. That will obviously slow your time down quite a lot. And then once we've turned it back to the left, we can go and actually loot those items that have fallen down from the ceiling. Also, a few people have asked about the skipping because we didn't do it in the first episode. We don't actually do the skipping there. We do it later. Yes, sadly, you do need to do it if you're going for a perfect game. And there is a trophy tied to getting 1,000 jumps in a row. So how we're going to do with that yet, I really don't know. I hate that mini game with a passion. But I'll give it a good shot when we come to it. But I did want to mention that because a few people have commented on it. I know I didn't talk about it in that first episode, but I hadn't forgotten about it, don't worry. Right, so at this point we enter the first of 3 battles against Steiner. This is probably the most normal one. And we're just going to steal from him. He's got a couple of items we can grab. A silk shirt and a leather hat, I believe. And then we just need to hit him 3 times, I think, in order to kill him. Don't worry so much about the silk shirt if you don't get it, because it is a slightly rarer steal, which means that you might not get it quickly, and time is of the essence. So try and get the leather hat though. You really should be able to get that quite quickly in the first round of stealing, and just hit him then to end the battle. So the next 2 battles against Steiner, we're going to do something a little different in order to end them faster. But that's all we need to do for this first one. And then we get this story sequence, which we just have to watch. And so there are a couple more cutscene movies that we'll have to skip in a moment. But for now, just make your way through the dialogue. This is always something I enjoy, which is where the battles take place on the stage and everybody thinks it's all part of the show. They have to improvise some dialogue and whatnot. I guess it's a shame we don't really get to read it or have time to read it, as we're spamming through it quickly. Okay, so at this point we'll enter our second of 3 battles with Steiner. And to end this one quickly, all you need to do is get every one of your party members except for Garnet to attack themselves. So Zidane and Marcus attack with physical attacks on themselves, and then Vivi casts fire on himself. Now it is important for each character to attack themselves rather than the other characters, because otherwise you'll have to wait for the next round in order to finish off the battle. So once the princess is left alive by herself, then the battle will at this point end. And don't worry, everybody will be back to life again in a moment. So it looks like the Prima Vista is good to go at this point, and we need to skip these cutscenes. The reason why I keep bringing up the pause menu there is because that's how you skip those cutscenes on Final Fantasy XII, and that's the habit I've got into. It's really annoying. So this fight, we're going to do the same thing. Now, we will have to wait for the bomb to grow, but it actually is delayed even longer if you don't kill off your characters. Again, keep Garnet alive. The reason for that is that they each have their own dialogue, and if they're dead, they don't do it. But we do need to keep one of them alive or we'll get game over. So once Vivi's dead here, all we need to do is wait out this encounter and the bomb will grow quickly. And then it's over. So this is a play, of course, on the traditional pantomime, where the villain hides behind one of the main protagonists and then follows them from behind so they can't see them as everyone shouts it's behind you. Although normally the villain in the pantomime doesn't explode for real in your face. Fortunately, it doesn't here either. Now in this cutscene we see the reveal of the crash site. You can't actually skip this one, so you do just have to wait it out. But that's fine. And at the end of it then you just need to control Zidane and run him up to the north. Just get a little bit more dialogue first. Okay, so here comes Zidane, and the final thing we need to do in this episode before actually getting to save is watching the ATE, the active time event. So you get a very brief tutorial. On the PS4 you just hit the touchpad and that brings up the ATE menu where you can select, in this case, Forest Keeper, our first ATE, and we are going to be watching them. But we will be skipping the dialogue as quickly as possible again, of course. And here we get the shadowy apparition, or the first boss, the plant boss, which is coming up in the next episode. And there we can save at last and bring an end to this section. Right, so I'm just going to load my save game here now so we can check the time that we've got to. And it's on 32:06, I think. which is good. The actual target time for this point is 31:33. So we are about 30 seconds behind schedule, but the reason for that is that the target times were designed for the PS1 version of the game, where it's a lot faster skipping dialogue than it is on the iOS, PS4 and Steam versions. That said, the PS1 version doesn't have the 4 options here that we get to use, such as in particular high speed mode and safe travel, and that's where we're going to be able to catch up our time a little bit later on. And the good news is using these 4 options does not disable trophies, despite what some people have suggested. I can't confirm whether that's true for the booster options, master abilities, gear max, etc. They may disable trophies, but I won't be using those anyway. We don't even need them for the speed playthrough. I mean, you don't need them for any playthrough, of course, but I mean, there's no reason. None of those are going to speed up our time, is what I meant to say. But anyway, folks, that brings us to the end of this 3rd section. So we're going to be starting on the Prima, or the Prima Vista crash site, on the next episode, where we're going to have to be facing off against our first real boss. So I hope you'll come back and join me for that. If you've enjoyed watching today, don't forget to leave a like. Let me know as well in the comment section if you're playing along with this perfect game walkthrough and how you're getting on with your times, etc. Thanks for stopping by today, folks. See you soon.